So I started too early. So over in the forums, in the floppy thread, Isan, I hope I'm saying your name right, Isan. If I'm not, please let me know. Um, Asked a really good question. He basically says, "Hey, I've got two floppies on the same page that are writing the same key." Now, usually this would seem like maybe a bad idea. But what he's doing is one of them is in a reusable. And he says, "Hey, when I update storage using the floppy reusable, the other floppy that's on my page that's reading the same key doesn't automatically update." And so he's asking, well, is that a bug? And unfortunately, it's not a bug. But let me explain what is happening and how you could work around that. Um, there isn't in like local storage, session storage, or in Floppy's implementation of IndexedDB, there isn't actually a storage event like in JavaScript, like in the DOM. Um, there's it just it only there's a storage event, but it only happens in one specific case, and it's the case of when you're using local storage, and it must be, traditional old-fashioned local storage, not IndexedDB. If you have a key and you have two different windows that are changing it, you can actually get a storage event from the one window that tells the other window, "Hey, this key updated, and I thought it'd let you know." And Floppy does react to that. That's what this option is. If when you open the main interface for Floppy, it's not automatic retrieval, but it's retrieve key when updated. And as I noted in the documentation and in the title, this is for this very specific case of you have local storage and you have like two windows open. Or you could imagine maybe you've got one page in your app that iframes another page in your app. Those things could be looking at the same key. And then if, say, the iframe version updates, like the owner page could know that that happened. And Floppy, if this option is yes, will actually detect that, and it'll automatically read the fresh values from local storage and publish those to its storage outputs, the list value storage output, or the list scalar storage output as appropriate. But this doesn't happen in any other case. And in a very strange design decision, those local storage events, like, they don't happen within the same page. It's like you can't have a page that like updates a storage value and then some function that will listen for that change in the same page. And you can kind of see the rationale for that, because it's like, well, look, you know that you wrote a new value, right? You're the programmer. You know you wrote a new value. But there's not an automatic event that we can watch. The only like automatic storage event that we can watch is this strange one that happens in local storage when you've got one window and then another window open in the same browser. And so basically those windows can communicate back and forth. That is not a feature of session storage. So if you're using session storage, that doesn't happen. And unfortunately, it's not a feature of local forage, which is the library that we use to write to IndexedDB. And so the other thing Isan was saying is that he's using IndexedDB local forage, which is, I mean, that would kind of be my preference actually now too, is to write to there rather than local storage. But if I did want to do the trick where I want to keep windows in sync, I would maybe use local storage instead. And I can maybe demonstrate that in this video, but what I wanted to do is to address and show this issue. So let's just look at this page. I've got three floppies here. This is kind of the master. So this is the original one that I made. So he is writing to IndexedDB local forage, okay? The list key called cart items, all right? And it's using the default, it's using I should really move where the forage options are up. So anyway, it's using the default database name. So this will appear in the database called local forage. And then the data store name is called cart. So Floppy is reading and writing from IndexedDB, local forage, cart items. Okay. And then he's basically copied. There's a clone of him that's called floppy clone favorite things. It is writing to the exact same key location. And then there's a third floppy in my page, which is in a reusable. And this floppy is also, I'm not going to dig into the repeating group. I'm not going to dig into the reusable just yet, but just know that the pink floppy that you see here is also reading and writing to the exact same key, but it lives in a reusable. Okay, so based on what I just said, you're probably realizing that having multiple floppies on the page doesn't really make a lot of sense. Or not, multiple floppies that are looking at the same key doesn't make a lot of sense. Although you could, one case that might make sense is you might have a floppy on the page that's reading and writing to a specific key, and you might have the element that I call floppy reader on the page that's looking at multiple keys, and you could get into the same situation where the keys don't seem to be in sync. But let's just demonstrate like what happens in the difficulty when we go over to the preview mode. So we're going over to preview mode for this page, and when it loads, all these floppies are going to be in sync, right? Because what they all do is they all read this key from IndexedDB, local forage, cart items. And currently, I have that value is set in my application for me in my browser. If you visited this page, you might not have this key yet. And so if you click these buttons, these different buttons will do different things. They'll save a different set of cart items to that key. So you can see that we have 5 items in our cart items list that's over here in local forage cart. Now, when we load the page, because all these things are configured the same, and they're set to automatically read the key when they're initialized, they're all in sync. And we can tell just because these are sort of like unique IDs. These favorite things just have random names. And so, though it's hard to see where the commas are, there are 5 of them, and we can see that, okay, this list, which is floppy master's list value is storage, right? That's the output that holds the current value for the key that it's watching, or that it's reading and writing. You can see that list is the same as floppy clones list values, and it's also the same as floppy reusables list values in storage, okay? But now I've got these 3 different buttons, and if I click this one, I'm going to store 5 random items in the cart using floppy master. If I click this one, I'm going to store 10 random items in the cart using floppy clone. And if I click this one, oops, I didn't update the button name. If I click this one, I'm going to store 20 random items in that cart key using floppy reusable. Okay, so let's take this one. This one's the one that's in the page. This is floppy clone, right? If I click this, what's going to happen is you'll see that my list changed, and floppy clone's list value storage is now these 10 items that are here. I could have used the unique IDs, and this list would look a little nicer. But you can see clearly that, okay, there's more items in this list than are in this list. And the reason for this is that there is no way for another floppy to know, like floppy master. There's no way for floppy master to know that floppy clone wrote these items into storage unless we tell it about that. Okay, there's just no automatic event in that case. And while one might be able to code around that, just because there's not a storage event, it would require just a lot of kind of lame code, and I don't think it would be a very good experience. So you'll see if I refresh here, right, now there's 10 items in cart items. And to get this floppy or this floppy to know about those, I would have to have them perform their retrieve action, which I don't think I've shown in any of my other videos because we've just been writing. So when I say that, the floppy storage output stays in sync with the local storage version, it's what that really means is that whenever you do the store action, whether it's by setting store values to yes in, any of the floppy RAM list manipulators, or you just, execute store key. Um, that we write the value into storage, and then we actually, I don't think I read it back because I already know what it should be, but so we publish the values, store them into local storage, and then we also put the bubble version of those at the storage output. Okay, and so they're in sync in this sense, but you can see they can get out of sync in this page example. Okay, similarly, if I were to go over here, this is the floppy that's in my reusable. I'm going to click it, and this is going to make 20 random items in the cart. And so now you see that the list of items is very long. And when I look over here and refresh my storage, I see that there's 20 values. So now I've got one of these guys that knows that there's 20 values, and then these other two guys that incorrectly think that there's 5 and 10 values respectively. So again, I would not encourage you to generally have two floppies on the page, but let me just show you how we could synchronize this if we wanted to be naughty and do this. What I could do is, because I know as the programmer that I updated the value in local storage, I could just add that to a workflow, right? So for example, when I click this button and we store 5 items, right? So we're doing store keys, and we're storing to the default list key, and we're just doing search for favorite things, items until 5, and there's a condition on here, sort by random sorting, okay? So that we get a quasi-random list of things, all right? What I could do, right, is I could trigger an action, or sorry, trigger like a custom event after this, right? Like, let's make a custom event. I could do a custom event that's like update other floppies. So let's do custom. Let's do create custom event. Let's call this update other floppies. All right. And what I could do with this is when this happens, we will, let's see. Well, it wouldn't really hurt. Like, we could make this very extensible just by saying, hey, like, take all the floppies that I can see and make them do their retrieve action, right? So like I could do like element actions. Oh, let's just search for it. It's retrieve. Retrieve keys of floppy. So I could say, well, okay, retrieve keys from floppy master, right? And then I would do another one, retrieve keys from floppy clone. And now these two guys would always stay in sync if on all my buttons here, after I stored keys, I did update other floppies. Oops, I guess I have to do custom event. Custom event, trigger a custom event, update other floppies, right? Then we'll do it on the 10 one. We'll say custom event, trigger a custom event, update other floppies. And I guess this might be better titled update all floppies, right? Again, I'm not encouraging you to do this. I'm just showing how you would do that, right? So we know that we changed the value of one floppy. We know that there's another floppy on the page that's looking at the same value. And so let's see, where are we at now? Okay, oh good, this is great because my storage now has the 20 items in it. So watch, I'll click this and change it to 5. And this one didn't update. What did I do wrong? Ha! Let's see, what did we do wrong? Did we actually retrieve keys, floppy master favorites, retrieve keys, floppy clone favorite things, 5, update all floppies, 10. Oh, that's funny. Wait, I want it to be like that. Did I call that, by just changing the name there, did I make a boo-boo? Update all floppies. I don't know, let's see if this works. Maybe this doesn't work. It should work. Maybe retrieve is broken. Shouldn't be. Mm-hmm. Go to console, make sure things are cool. All right, so we've got what? We have 5 and everything. If I store 10, oh, that's a real bummer. Well, this is interesting. You know what the problem with the approach I was trying is? Turns out to be that it looks like trigger a custom event is acting asynchronously. So what's happening is that trigger update all floppies happens before store keys is actually done, even though store keys is synchronous and retrieve keys is synchronous. And now there's an annoying car alarm. So anyway, it's sort of unexpected behavior, but we'll just do this a different way. But it looks like trigger update all floppies does not wait for store keys to complete, and so when we retrieve the keys over here, we just get the same values back. So instead of triggering update all floppies like in each workflow, we could just listen for the various events that are emitted on storage. So, like, let's see, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this. I told you this is a bad idea to have multiple floppies on the page now. Let's see. So when store, yeah, we get the stored list key. In this case, we'll get the stored list key event. So what do we want to do? Oh, I see what we need to do now. We'll just replace this. I was trying to do this like a kind of fun, fancy way, but what we'll do is we'll just listen for each of these events, right? So let's change this, replace by another type. We will change this to trigger on a floppy stored list key, right? We'll replace that. And now in this one, we'll listen for when floppy master favorite things stores a key. We will, let's delete this one. So when, okay, so this is update, change this label again, update floppy clone. Retrieve. I don't know. You could give it a different name. So when we get the, oh man, I hate when you change your names and then you like lose the thing. Oops. Let's go forward. Sorry for thrashing. Did all floppies. Oh, it's just gonna be better if I just do this from scratch. So let's see. Let's get an element. Okay, I moved my head around. Sorry. Let's see. So let's do when a floppy stored a list key. We'll say, okay, when master stores its list key, this is an event that triggers when master is done storing its key. So when floppy master stored list key, what we'll do is we'll retrieve the keys over in clone. And then vice versa. I guess we could copy this and paste it. Vice versa. So when floppy clone gets updated, we will retrieve the keys, or floppy clone finishes storing, we will retrieve the keys from master. Let's see if this works. Can't guarantee this is going to work. It should, though. I mean, it's, theoretical. All right. So what do we have here? It looks like we've got 10 keys. So what if I make this guy do 5? There we go. Okay, see, now we set master to have 5 keys. And then when that's done, we automatically detect that. And then we update floppy clone. And then, of course, since we haven't done anything to solve this problem for our reusable, floppy reusable, like still thinks there's 10 items, okay? Just to recap what I did there, because I think that got a little confusing. And I will look into this more. I just looked at my code and I tested store keys for synchronicity. I think the problem we were having with trigger custom event must just run ahead. I'm gonna have to think about that more and test it more, obviously. But anyway, what we did is we just said, hey, when floppy clone ever finishes storing a key, we'll update master, and when master ever finishes storing a key, we will update floppy clone, right? Now let's go on to the repeating. Let's repeat the reusable. I don't use reusables a lot, so I end up saying dumb stuff. Like I'll call it a repeat. It's a reusable. So if we look at this reusable, where is it? I called it cart items floppy. Um, and so cart items floppy is just a copy of those that text block and button, which I labeled wrong here. Okay, floppy. This one is called floppy reusable, so we'll just say, okay, I'm just fixing this button. Be more clear. Usable. So now we will update. We'll put 20 randoms in the cart using the key um, floppy, well, using floppy reusable to write that same key, right? The other things are writing. Okay. Now, with reusables, you said this, Ishan said that they were using the reusable, the floppy that's in the reusable, to do the key writing. And so, we're simulating that here. When we click this button, we're writing 20 items to the key. Now, how do reusables communicate with our page? Well, if we consult the documentation, did I lose my documentation? Here we go. If you read the bubble docs on working with reusable elements, you will note this. Where is it? Here we go. Note that the outermost group of the reusable is extremely important because its custom states can be accessed and set from workflows on the page that the reusable element is added to. Aha. So what this tells us we should do is we'll take the outermost group here, right? This is the name of the reusable cart items flop. I did give it I give it a type of favorite thing. I don't know that we really need to use the type here, but I can go up, right, and set a custom state. The easiest way to do that here is to, let me remove that, build this from scratch. So you can hit the I button here, and this brings up a panel called the Element Inspector, and it shows all the custom states that are on this object, and we can add a custom state. And so let's say, we'll just call it floppy reusables. Floppy reusables. This. Okay. And what's stored in the list, right, is favorite things, and it is a list. And so now I have a custom state that I can write to from workflows and that I can read from in our page. So I think what we want to do here is whenever a storage event happens, and there's only one way in this reusable. There's probably other ways in your reusable. In this reusable, there's only this button that causes store keys to be updated. We could actually listen. We should probably actually just listen for the event, similar to how we did it in the other page. So let's do this. Let's say we'll do a workflow here that will run on when Floppy has stored a list key, right? This is the issue you're having. Like this thing is writing, and then the other thing doesn't know that write happened, okay? And so we'll just look at that. We'll say when a Floppy stored list key from Floppy Reusable's favorite things, all right, we will do set state of an element. The element that we're going to set the state of is cart items floppy, and the custom state will be floppy reusable list storage, right? And we'll set that value to floppy reusables. I guess we could just say this floppy in this context because we already know that it's floppy reusable. We'll say this floppy's list values storage. Okay, so whenever this thing writes, we'll get the stored list key event, right? And so we know that happened, and then what we'll do is we're going to set that custom state, we'll set it to what's now at the storage output, right? And so in this way, we should be able to see that back up in our page. So now we have to go back to our page, and this is floppy demo 6 retrieval. What are we looking at? We are looking at, now there's a little trick here. So what we want to look for is this is general condition. So do when a condition is true. So what we'll say, okay, so we'll say when, where's the reusable part? There we go. Card items, floppies. Aha, look, there's our custom state, floppy. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Floppy Reusables list. You know what I meant to say. Okay, only when floppies, card items, floppies, floppy Reusalables list storage, count. I think we should do it this way. If we count greater than 0. Like that. This is a great application for expression logic too, but we'll do it different. We'll do this another way too. So we'll just say, okay, when that custom state on floppy reusable actually has any items on it, what we'll do is we will update floppy clone and floppy master. So let's see. What did we do? We retrieved the keys. All right. So when oh, here it is. And what? Did I just lose that event? I don't see my event for. Oh, here it is. I made it cyan so I would notice it, and then now I just forgot what it was. Okay, so we're doing this when that custom state has values in it. We're going to retrieve keys of floppy using master, and we're going to retrieve keys of floppy using plump to cause them to get back into sync. Let's see if that works. This won't quite work, I think, in all cases yet. But I'm going to point something else out as well. But I just want to show that this can be done. So let's set the floppy reusable to 20, right? Set it with 20 random card items. Ah, look at that. It actually worked. So what happened is that floppy reusable just wrote an updated key. Let's go over into our console or application view. And here's my cart. Here's my cart items. Refresh this. Ah, yes, there are 20 values in there, right? And then we caused them to be read back. We caused floppy clone and floppy master to do their retrieve. Now, the question at this point is, do we need floppy master? Because you're not using floppy master to write, right? You're only using floppy reusable. And we just exposed a state on floppy reusable that any time that its storage changes, we push those to this custom state. So, like, my suggestion would be you don't need this other floppy. Like, he's getting in the way. I mean, maybe you want to use him for like all the neat kind of list, shifting things and list creation and stuff like that. But if you're not going to write to the key, what I would do, right, is like turn off the automatic key writing, right? Like this one, he doesn't use a scalar key, but he does use a list key. Like, we'll just wipe that out, and like now he doesn't care about any particular key, and anytime we do these workflow actions like retrieve key, like it's not going to do anything. It's safe to have the action here, but he's not going to do anything. So for example, let's go back into the page. I'll show you if that's true. So you see it, floppy master storage and empty because floppy master is not looking at any key. Okay. But now if I change, if this changes somehow, like this guy will change as well. But of course we don't need clone either. And like I said, it's kind of a bad idea to like have these two things watching the same key in the page. There's very little, I can't actually think of a reason you'd really need to do that. Okay, so now that we have floppy reusable doing its thing, okay, what I'm going to do is just show you, go back into design mode, and now usable over here. Actually, let's go edit the reusable real quick. I hate that I got that key name so effed up. It's the key name, the custom state name, floppy reusable, floppy reusable. We could even put an apostrophe in there, but that might confuse us because because the this that might confuse us because the expression editor also has apostrophes for us. But this will make it look like we're really just looking at floppy reusables list values storage because I gave it like the same name. We can't directly access floppy reusable. We can only see these custom states that are on the outer group of my reusable object. Okay. All right. So let's go back to the main page, right? And I'm just going to put a text element in here just to show us the value of that custom state that's exposed. Okay. So floppy reusables state, right? And then it's part items floppies, floppy reusables list value storage, each item's name. It's an object, so thing. So we have to do it. Okay? Or we could look at its unique IDs. But so now what you'll find, actually, do one other thing. I like to make these bold. Bold. It's important. Pay attention to me. I'm in bold. Yeah, it works. Okay. Right. So page to reload. Thank you, Bubble, for being so fast. That. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay. So see, we don't know the state yet because we haven't reported it because we only reported on storage. But when we report it on storage, you can see that okay, now this custom state, it's kind of the same thing as having like that floppy master here, right? Because we can just get the list. Now, to solve this problem of on page load, we don't see the state. We go back into our reusable, and hopefully you've learned a lot about reusables from this. Go back to that reusable cart item floppy, and it needs another workflow. So in the workflows on this guy, so we update the floppy reusable favorite things whenever we store a key, whenever we store the key, but we also need to do it on initialized. So when a floppy is initialized, and that floppy is going to be floppy reusable, when floppy reusable is initialized, we also need to store that value. So I guess here, okay. And so now when it's initialized, it will report its values whenever we store a new key, new values to key, it will be updated, right? And so then when we're back testing this page, we should on page load, not literally on the page load event, but I mean as the page loads, what we will do is we should see, oh, why didn't that work? Why didn't that work? Okay, well, I just went away for a second, and what I discovered actually is there was a bug in my update function. It actually was not waiting for the values to be read back. So there was a synchronicity problem with initialized, which I just fixed. And so there's going to be a new version of Floppy for you that actually fixes that problem. And I'm gonna look at store keys a little bit more and see if that might maybe I did something bad since the last time I tested it for synchronicity. But anyway, this is how we do it. So now that we have a correctly working initialized state, what will happen is when floppy reusables initialized, we will set its states on this custom state so that they can be reported back up to the page. Now, if we reload this page, this works as we expected the first time. Okay, so you'll see that floppy reusable state is immediately available to us over here. So this is what I would do with a reusable in floppy, right? So in your scenario where you're like, I've got a reusable, inside the reusable is a floppy that's like writing to a certain key. If you want to make that key value available to the page, don't do it with another floppy on the page, right? Because there isn't a magic sync. There's no event like for when storage is updated that we can trigger off of automatically. I wish there were, but there's not in this particular case. And so this is the way you have to do it. So just like when the floppy in your reusable gets initialized, report its state, and anytime the storage gets updated, take that storage value and push it out to that custom state, and then you can see that state in your page. Okay, I hope that helps, and I will push an update to floppy shortly that fixes the thing with initialized. But there you go. I hope that helps.